The avoidant person operates from a position of assumed superiority, believing their emotional detachment grants them power and control, while viewing their partner's desire for connection as weakness or neediness. This psychological stance remains unchallenged when partners accommodate their limitations, accept breadcrumbs, and adjust their expectations downward to maintain the relationship. However, when someone directly challenges this dynamic by refusing to accept poor treatment and establishing firm boundaries around their own worth, it creates a profound disruption that forces the avoidant person to confront the consequences of their defensive patterns. Challenge their emotional unavailability with standards. The avoidant person begins recognizing their mistake when confronted with someone who refuses to accept inconsistent effort, vague communication, or emotional distance as acceptable relationship behavior. This challenge involves clearly articulating needs for reciprocity, consistency, and emotional presence while demonstrating willingness to walk away if those needs remain unmet. When someone stops making excuses for their limitations and instead establishes firm standards for how they deserve to be treated, it disrupts the avoidant person's comfortable position of control. This confrontation forces them to choose between maintaining their defensive patterns and losing someone valuable. Previously, their withdrawal triggered anxious pursuit that allowed them to avoid accountability for their behavior. When someone challenges them with calm boundaries instead of desperate accommodation, they lose the ability to blame their partner's neediness for relationship problems. They must confront the reality that their emotional unavailability, rather than their partner's expectations, represents the fundamental incompatibility. Challenge their narrative of superiority. The avoidant person realizes their mistake when someone directly challenges their implicit belief that independence makes them superior to people who desire emotional connection. This challenge involves refusing to accept the framing that wanting intimacy equals weakness, while emotional detachment equals strength. When someone articulates that true strength involves vulnerability and that their avoidance represents fear rather than superiority, it penetrates their defensive rationalization. They begin questioning the narrative they have constructed to justify their patterns when confronted with someone who demonstrates strength through emotional availability rather than distance. The challenge exposes that their detachment stems from wounds and limitations rather than evolved emotional capability. This realization proves uncomfortable as it threatens their self-image and forces recognition that their defensive strategies represent coping mechanisms rather than conscious choices rooted in strength. Challenge them with your absence. The avoidant person confronts their mistake most powerfully when challenged with complete absence and genuine indifference from someone who once cared deeply. This challenge involves withdrawing all emotional investment, attention, and availability without explanation or drama. The silence communicates that their behavior has consequences they cannot control or reverse through their usual strategies of offering minimal effort when threatened with loss. When they realize someone has genuinely moved forward rather than waiting for their readiness, they experience profound regret about taking someone's presence for granted. The challenge of absence forces them to sit with the loss their defensive patterns created, recognizing too late that their withdrawal strategy has succeeded in making them irrelevant to someone who once valued them. They confront the painful reality that their fear of vulnerability has guaranteed the exact outcome they sought to avoid: abandonment and isolation. Challenge their belief that you need them. The avoidant person realizes their mistake when challenged with evidence that their former partner has built a fulfilling life that demonstrates complete independence from their validation or presence. This challenge involves visibly thriving, radiating happiness, and creating meaningful connections that reveal their absence created space for growth rather than devastation. When they witness someone flourishing without them, it challenges their unconscious belief that they hold unique importance or that others cannot survive their withdrawal.